what we're going to do today is I'll speak a little bit about the Mela, about the messages of the Mela, and then Pujya Swamiji will give a blessing with what is the message that we get from the Kumbh, and how does it pertain to all of us, whether physically our bodies were able to go to the Mela or not. And as I mentioned in the Arti a couple of nights ago, this particular Kumbh that we dedicated to the initiative of a green Kumbh. And so we will end the program today by showing a film about Mother Ganga and the work that is being done for her protection and preservation. When talking about the Kumbh, I think the best place to start is with the story of what it is. What is the Kumbh? Why do we go? Why does it take place? Why is it important? There are many, many different stories and aspects of the Indian spiritual cultural tradition that talk about the Kumbh, but I'm going to give you a simple story, the simplest one, that is full of the messages, that it's not just about that which happened however many thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years ago, but that which pertains to our lives today. So it is said that there was a time in history, long, long ago, in which the forces of good and the forces of evil were always fighting, much as you'll notice like they still are today. And at that time, the forces of evil were always conquering, always beating the forces of good. They also outnumbered the forces of good. They were prepared to use all sorts of cunning methods to win. They were prepared to cheat. They were prepared to do everything that forces of evil are prepared to do. And so in this constant battle between goodness and evil, the forces of goodness were losing. And so the forces of goodness went to the divine and said, this battle is going on all the time. And these forces of evil, of adharma, of unrighteousness, are killing us. They're vanquishing us. They're conquering us. We need something. Because if they keep winning, then slowly, slowly, there won't be any forces of good left. So the divine said to them, okay, here's what you do. You churn the ocean, much like making butter. You churn the ocean. And when you churn the ocean, from deep within the ocean, a pot of the nectar of immortality will come out. And when you drink that pot of the nectar of immortality, you will become immortal. So whatever they do, however cunning their methods may be, however strong they may be, however much they may outnumber you, you'll be immortal. They won't be able to conquer you and vanquish you. So the forces of good thought, oh, well, that's wonderful. If we become immortal, then nothing to worry about. We can't lose. But then the divine said to them, however, in order to churn this ocean, you can't do it alone. You actually need to employ the help of the forces of evil, who are your brothers. So you need to bring them into this churning and churn the ocean together. And I'm going to stop here rather than give the story and then go back with the messages. I'll stop a couple of points along the way because there are messages as we go along. And this is an important one. So many of us on the spiritual path, it becomes a path just of goodness. As it should be in theory. I mean, of course, where we want to go in life is toward goodness, toward dharma, toward the light, toward peace. And yet, we can't get there until we first really deal with the forces of evil. You're not going to get to the light within yourself or in the world by ignoring the darkness, by ignoring the evil. And in order to really get the nectar, that deep nectar, that nectar of immortality, you've got to bring those forces in as well. And make that part of the process. It can't be done by denying or suppressing or repressing or avoiding the forces of badness. And so on our path, it's so important for us always to keep our eyes open. Of where are we just avoiding? Where are we running away? Where are we keeping ourselves too busy? Where are we not looking? Where are we not introspecting? What are we not aware of? Because, like the forces of good, we're really looking for something very deep. We're not looking for just superficial level, goody-goody happiness. We're looking for something deep. That's what this union of yoga means. And in order to find that, we need to bring in all the forces and bring in all the energy, particularly that which is within ourselves. So they bring in their brothers, the forces of evil, and they start churning the ocean. And I'm not going to go into the details because otherwise we'll take up the entire time just telling the story, but as they churn, lots of different things come up before the nectar. And one of the most beautiful messages that Puja Swamiji gives about this is in our lives, when we're looking for nectar, when we're looking for light, when we're looking for divinity, when we're looking for goodness, we're looking for dharma. So frequently, other junk comes up first. And in this churning, one of the things that came up was poison. Not just junk, but actual poison, deadly poison. And we find that in our lives. We turn ourselves toward a path of yoga, a path of spirituality, a path of goodness, a path of dharma. And what do we find along the way? Poison. Poison in the form of whether it's people that we're working with, people we're living with. Poison in the form of just feeling like the universe is conspiring against us. But here it is, we've taken on all of these noble goals, noble ideas. We're now working to be in spiritual alignment, and how is it that the universe is now sort of conspiring against us and everything is turning against us? And he says, well, that always happens. The poison always comes first. And when the poison came, they couldn't continue the churning until someone dealt with the poison. It couldn't be ignored, it couldn't be abandoned, couldn't be denied. Somebody had to deal with that poison. And the problem is, if the poison were swallowed by anyone, well then it wreaks havoc inside. Like in our lives. If we swallow what happens to us, we swallow what other people say, what other people do, other people's issues, other people's poison. We swallow it, it festers within us. It turns into all kinds of diseases within us. It turns into depression and anxiety and frustration and physical illnesses. And yet if we spit it out, well then it injures the world around us. And so they didn't know what to do with this poison. And that's where Lord Shiva came forward. We're actually just in a few days going to be celebrating Mahashivratri, which is the sacred night dedicated to Lord Shiva. And again, I'm not going to go into details about Shiva because that's also a topic in and of itself. But what's important is what Shiva did. Well, Shiva took that poison and he held it in his throat. And that's where the word Neelkanth comes from. There's actually a very sacred temple just about 14, 15 kilometers from here, called the Nilkand Mahadev Temple. Mahadev means the great, the truly great of the gods, of the forces of good. And what made him, in this moment, stand out so differently from the other devas was he was the one who came forward and said, no problem, I'll take care of it. No problem. For the sake that this churning should continue, the sake of the family, I'll take the poison. And Pujya Swamiji always teaches, he says, in our lives, can we become like Lord Shiva? Can we be the ones to say, okay, I'll take this poison. Not I'll swallow it inside and let it fester and turn into tumors inside me. Not I'm going to spit it out. But hold it in the throat like Lord Shiva did. Nilkand, blue throat. That's why his throat became blue, is the poison, blue throat. And then what did he do? Then he came right here to this temple, this area that they built the temple based on, and he meditated. And so in our lives, when poison comes, the message is don't swallow it, don't spit it out, don't ignore it, don't run away from it, because if you do, you'll never get the nectar. In order to get the real nectar of life, we have to stay with the churning. We have to not run when poison comes. And yet, that's where the practice of meditation comes in. That's what Shiva did. It wasn't that he held it in his throat and then went shopping, or held it in his throat and then went and, got a manicure or massage, or bought a new pair of shoes, or, went to a bar or saw a movie. No. He held it in his throat and then sat to meditate. And that's the message for us, is when that poison comes up in our life, in our internal practice, in our families, in our communities, in our workplaces, we acknowledge it, we hold it, and we meditate. So, finally, the nectar emerges. And when the nectar emerges, the forces of good became very nervous again, because they thought, well, if the forces of evil grab this nectar, then not only will they outnumber us, not only will they be stronger, not only will they be more cunning and more clever, more mischievous, but now they're going to have this nectar of immortality, and so we won't even be able to kill them. And so one of the forces of good took this pot of nectar and ran away to prevent the forces of evil from going. And it is said that when he ran, as he ran through the heavens and through the universe, 4 drops of this nectar fell on the earth. And the 4 places upon which the nectar fell are the 4 places where we celebrate the Kumbh Mela. That's Haridwar, which is very near to here. Allahabad, which is in the state of Uttar Pradesh, and it's the confluence of the Ganga, the Yamuna, and the Saraswati rivers, and Ujjain and Nasik. But in general, the Haridwar and the Allahabad Kumbh tend to be the biggest ones. And the one in Allahabad out of every one is the one to which the most people come. They were estimating about 100 million people who come into a land that much of the year is actually covered with water. This is what's so phenomenal. It's not the banks of a river. It's the river bed. The Ganga and the Yamuna flow and they rise. Like if you came here in August, where you sit for Aarti would actually be covered with Ganga. She rises 20, 25, 30 feet. So Ganga and Yamuna rise. Much of the land is covered with water. The water recedes in October, November. And the Kumbh gets erected on this dry river. So you're actually living in the bed of these sacred rivers. And people come from all over the world to have a bath in that confluence of the Ganga and the Yamuna and the Saraswati. The timing of the Kumbh is determined astrologically based on where the stars and planets were in alignment at that time, when it happened, when they're back in that same alignment, so the energy is recharged, just like that. But here's an important part. When we think about immortality, what most of us identify as immortality means I don't die. And that's what it meant in the story that goes along with it. We don't die. And yet, no one who comes to the Kumbh, out of 100 million people, no one really believes that if they have a bath in the waters, the cells of their body aren't going to slough off and regenerate. That at some point, the body won't turn back to earth. We all know. We all know that those who are born have to. We all know that we come from the earth, we will go back to the earth. That, in fact, is one of the great symbols of the ash that you'll see so many of the sadhus or the babas wear on their bodies. That's the message. Whether it's all over their body, whether it's on their forehead, that's the message. We come from ash, and we return to ash. So whatever we're doing here, whatever we're attached to, whatever we're accumulating, whatever we think is so important, I've got to finish this, I've got to finish that, I've got to do this, I've got to achieve that. At the end of the day, we all just go back to ash. And so that's what the message reminds us of. So when we talk about immortality in the Kumbh and we call it this festival of the nectar of immortality, what does it mean? What is drawing people over and over again to this area? And what it really means is that in that sacred place, in this holy land, at this auspicious time, in the presence of the revered saints, we get a touch, a taste, a glimpse, a blink of that part within ourselves, which is immortal. All of the saints and the sages and the rishis, the gurus, the masters, tell us over and over again, you are not this body. You are not this body. When I first met Puja Swamiji, I had been here maybe only 2 or 3 weeks, and I was sitting with him and he held up a pen. These are throat lozenges, but we'll pretend it's a pen. He held up a pen and he said, you are not this pen. And I laughed. I had been here 2 or 3 weeks, and I thought, well, of course I'm not this pen. And he was silent, but he was very serious. And he looked at me and he said, there will come a time when you laugh in the same way when I tell you you are not this body. Today, you're able to accept the fact that you're not this body. But you still think you are this body, you are your history, you are your emotions, you are your identifications. But there will come a time when it's just as absurd to identify with the body, with the identity, with the emotions, as it would be for you to identify with being this red pill. And so, when we talk about the nectar of immortality, what it is a glimpse, an experiential glimpse. Not a book, not a lecture, but an actual experience by the grace of the Queen, of realizing that within ourselves, which is immortal. That within ourselves, which didn't take birth, which isn't getting old, which never will die. That part of us that is one with the universe. That part of us that when the masters talk over and over again about yoga as being this union with the divine, that it's not union with something separate. It's not like a bridge connecting two things that otherwise were separate. But it's a union with that which already is. An awareness, rather. An awakening to the union. And so that's the nectar of immortality that the kumbh offers us. Is a glimpse of that spot within yourself, which isn't this body, which isn't these emotions, which isn't your identity. And for those of us who have been there, what is most phenomenal about it is that the way that it gives you that glimpse is not that you sit down in meditation and, from the sky some hand comes on your head and now you've been blessed with this glimpse. But I always say the kumbh is like the crystallization, the distillation of India, which means it throws up in your face from deep within your being the very best of who you are. That divine, eternal, pure, perfect, complete center. And the worst of you. That which is the most identified with the body, with the emotions, with the attachments, with the expectations. And it throws these two things up in your face in such a way that ocean that the forces of good and forces of evil were churning starts taking place within you. And so that churning of the ocean actually is what happens to all of us when we die. We get churned inside. And from that churning, eventually, with the grace, that nectar emerges. And in conclusion, the beautiful aspect about every part of Indian spiritual tradition is it's all available in every moment. Pujya Swamiji always tells people, wherever you live, whatever river is there, if you invoke Ganga, if you pray to Ganga, don't forget. The divine tells us over and over again, in whatever form the devotee worships me, I appear to the devotee in that form. Doesn't matter. So, whether you were able to actually be physically present with us in the sacred riverbed, in the kumbh, or not, don't worry. Allow that kumbh to take place within you. That's available everywhere. And the way to allow it is when you notice the churning within you. That happens to all of us. Over and over again. We're being churned inside. When that happens, know that that's your key. That's the path to the nectar of immortality. That from this churning, don't run from it. Don't repress it. Don't suppress it. Don't sit back just in analysis of it. Allow that churning to take place. Because from that inner churning is where that nectar emerges. And when that nectar emerges, that's where you really get the glimpse of what yoga is really about. That glimpse, that taste of that union, that oneness with that which is immortal. Because it's within all.